is Laurel Ruma here with O'Reilly Media at Strata Summit in New York City. And we are talking with Stephen Coller and Denise Cooper of the Gates Foundation today. And we're looking at education and how big data and education mix. So, Stephen, what are you working on and what are you excited about, really?
Well, I think we're excited for the same reason that everybody in the room is excited in terms of what one can accomplish when one brings data together in new and powerful ways. Education is one of the last segments of the economy to benefit from this trend, and the Foundation's been asked to step in and see how we can help. And given our mix of somewhat patient capital, results orientation, and the fact that our founders do come from the technology sector, means that we think we can provide a bit of a nudge to the industry and to the education space in general to help get it to a more constructive place.
We're talking about bigger than just teacher evaluations. We're talking about
yes, this has nothing to do with teacher evaluations. This is about gaining insight into whether or not children are making progress in their understanding of key concepts in mathematics and literacy.
That's amazing. And Denise, what are you working on? What's your focus on this project?
Well, they got me involved in the project because a key component of it is transparency and building a sustainable community around this work so that Gates doesn't have to fund it forever and it can stand on its own. So my job is to make sure that there's a thriving developer community and a really, really good ecosystem, and that they make the right choices in governance and other things to make it as open as it can possibly be, and ready for even more transparency as the understanding in the education community evolves.
So open, but also open source?
Oh yeah, of course, open source. Why else would you hire me? But also, I'm excited because I off and on over my whole career have been teaching. I was a teacher in the Peace Corps. It was my first job, and I want to see the quality of instruction and the precision that teachers can bring to the classroom to really increase. I was very impressed at the end of Anisha's panel talk about the whole equation of increasing productivity by making big data work for people to make them be able to do more with less. We know that teachers are completely overburdened now. We know that change is really hard for them to ingest because changes have always been hard, have meant less for them, have meant scarcity. And what we're trying to say here is, no, this is going to let you go back to doing the reason that you became a teacher in the first place. You'll be able to focus on that because we'll give you quality tools that make it possible to do that. Less switching around, less context switching, and more natural flow around how kids actually learn.
And Stephen, with this eye on the big data and trying to understand it and extrapolate information from it, I mean, you're really looking at great possibilities, because people may know that the Gates Foundation has a fantastic pilot school in Philadelphia as well. So are you looking at lessons learned from that as well, or hands-on, like really in the classroom and what's going on in individual schools, or is it the first steps really going to be looking at the entire educational system and trying to get some information from the overall picture?
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, we're trying to drive both at the same. You sort of have to do both. So as is fairly well known, the foundation has investments both in the charter space and in the public space, and part of this work will involve working both with states, districts, and nominated schools within those districts, so that we can observe at the ground level how teachers are using the information, how they're translating it into action, and how we can improve on the supports they're receiving to do that. You can't just provide a technology and expect it to drive itself. In this particular context, it requires some support, some scaffolding, and we aim to invest in that with the states and districts we're working with.
Oh, that's fantastic. So we're here live at Strata in New York City with Denise Cooper and Stephen Coller of the Gates Foundation, and we're talking about big data and education. So where do you start? You have a big project ahead of you.
We do. Our job was made easier because, in fact, it's not really our job. The effort is being led by an organization that manages all state superintendents in the country, and they're the group that came forward with this idea, and they've already made the work to assemble 5 states initially that represent roughly 9 million students, and another 4 that represent a further 3 or 4 million. So by the end of this incubation, all going well, we'll have 20% of the US student population working in this new paradigm. So we're funding the effort, but other people are driving the work and taking the real risks.
So 5 states, can you list them?
Certainly. So the 5 initial states will be Illinois, Colorado, New York, North Carolina, and Massachusetts.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's my home state. So this kind of initiative must be it must be actually great to work with people who are really looking to change kind of from bottom up. I mean, superintendents, of course, have a top-down role, but you're also looking at an industry who's like, okay, let's work with someone to figure out what we can do better. So actually having them come to you probably allows you to kind of break in a bit easier.
Yes, and I think we also need to be very thoughtful in our approach. This is a segment that for too long has been sort of suffered from overpromises and under-delivery. I think we need to be held accountable by our teacher audience to the benefits we're telling them we're going to provide, and we will take it a delivery at a time in terms of monitoring our progress.
So Denise, what's the first thing for you?
Well, so this has the unique property, this project, of trying, the end audience is teachers, parents, kids, and developers, trying to get developers to meet the needs of those three other audiences and to create a virtuous circle so that, hacker kids can get at their own data and do interesting things. So these days we're talking about the stack that we're going to build using the right components. We're going to create an API, an open API, and some sample applications to get people started and sort of prime the pump on this thing. And at the same time, simultaneously, we need to work on an understanding among the stakeholders of why it's important to really open the data. Right now, a lot of it's held in proprietary silos, and working with those silo owners to get them to understand. So this morning's talks were really, really cogent for us because, the idea of data philanthropy, the idea that as an entity holding on to data isn't necessarily a business model. That's going to be really helpful to us as we're trying to explain this evolving business model to this community, because it's going to shift a lot of things. I mean, you know this from O'Reilly, right? That where the print book kind of changed, and you guys had to scramble pretty fast, and you guys have really gotten out ahead of, wow, transparency actually works as a marketing tool, and it doesn't all have to be held so tightly. And this is a community that doesn't know that fact yet. So
that's a very good point. Transparency as a way of life,
yeah,
which is really great, and sounds like a fantastic effort. And we certainly look forward to seeing you next year and what great progress you've made. So thank you very much. We had Stephen Coller and Denise Cooper from the Gates Foundation.